right, welcome everyone to our March 2nd Design Review Commission meeting. If you are joining us by Zoom, your ID number will be 833-0529-6389, and the login password is 782241, and you can join by phone at 1-669-900-6833. So with that, can we have a welcome and roll call, please?
Yes, we can. Commissioner Newsom.
Here.
Commissioner Killian.
Here.
Commissioner Krelling.
Here.
Vice Chair Valia.
Here.
And Chair Case.
Here.
We have a quorum, and if I may, I'd like to, as Secretary of this commission, I'd like to welcome Philip Newsom. He's a local architect and will fill the shoes of the architect for the Design Review Commission. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so with that, we will move to the election of chair. Do we have a nomination for our chair?
I will nominate Charles Krelling. Krelling. It's as chairman of this commission.
I second that.
Shall we have a vote? Commissioner Newsom.
Aye.
Commissioner Killian.
Aye.
Commissioner Krelling.
Aye.
Commissioner Valia.
Yes.
And Commissioner Case.
Yes.
Chair Krelling, you can switch
Switch some spots.
switch the seats.
Wow.
All right.
Up,
Congratulations.
up into the pilot seat.
Things happen fast here, huh?
All right.
The left seat is the pilot seat.
Okay.
This is kind of funny.
Now, if the new chair would like to run the election of vice chair.
All right, thank you. Do we have a nomination for vice chair?
I nominate Brian Killian.
I second that.
All right, motion made and seconded.
Okay. Let me get the notes. Commissioner Case.
Yes.
Commissioner Valia.
Yes.
Commissioner Newsom.
Yes.
Commissioner Killian.
Yes.
Chair Krelling.
Yes.
We have a new vice chair. Commissioner Killian.
Park, you want to move here?
Musical chairs.
See, you can't get away from me.
This has been your dream since I joined. All right. When you're ready, Mr. Secretary.
We are ready.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the consent calendar. And I don't know that we have anything specific on consent or anything that we want to move to consent.
There is no requests.
So with nothing on consent, I think we have nothing to approve, correct?
Correct.
All right. Moving on to public communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the Commission cannot act on items raised during public communications, but they may respond briefly to statements made or question posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. So do we have anybody in the chambers who's not on the agenda who wishes to address the Commission? And then do we have anybody on Zoom?
I see no hands.
All right. Then we will close public communications and move on to public hearings. Our first project tonight is Broadway Point Master Sign Program for Design Review and Sign Ordinance Exceptions on application Y21053 at 1450 Mount Diablo and 1245 North Broadway Boulevard. Do we have a staff report?
Hello? Yes. Thank you, and good evening, Design Review Commissioners. My name is Jessica Gonzalez, and I am the project planner for the Broadway Point Master Sign Program. Before I get started, I just wanted to do some quick housekeeping. Please note that page 4 of the MSP does include 2 references to allow neon. Those were left in error and will be removed by the applicant in the final MSP. So just a quick overview of the project site. The Broadway Point is a large two-story retail and commercial building with a parking garage. This site is bounded by South Main, North Broadway, Mount Diablo, and Duncan. The project scope includes a new master sign program for the entire Broadway Point property and sign ordinance amendment. As you know, all MSPs require full design review commission review with sign subcommittee input. And so the project was presented to the DRC sign subcommittee on January 5th. At that sign subcommittee meeting, the committee noted support for the MSP, including the wall signs over 25 feet in height, but did recommend that the MSP include a maximum height for blade signs, which the applicant did add at 12 feet in height, and that they increase the spacing from signs to different architectural features. The applicant increased that. And also that they noted no support for a sign ordinance exception to allow second floor exterior signage for tenants that did not have any ground floor area. And so in response, the applicant did remove those signs as well as that request. And then lastly, the sign subcommittee asked the applicant to consider removing the internally lit lettering. The applicant actually left that option in for lighting, but as I mentioned, did address all other sign subcommittee comments. And so as discussed in the staff report, the MSP includes sign size standards based on unit size, acceptable sign illumination, and does outline standards for secondary signage such as blade signs. And so in the MSP, smaller tenants are referred to as minor tenants. These units can have a maximum of 12-inch letter height for single line text. Larger tenants with spaces over 5,000 square feet are referred to as major tenants, and these tenants can have a maximum 16-inch letter height for single line text. So these may be difficult to see on this screen, but they are the east and south elevations, and they do show these sign locations. So we can probably come back to these if needed, but these are the north and west elevations as well. And so as noted on the elevation, the different elevations, the MSP calls out a maximum sign height of 29 feet. The code does allow over 25 feet in height with required findings. And so based on the existing architecture, which includes high storefront windows, tall entryways as shown on the screen, and already existing higher exterior wall areas used for existing signs, staff does support the ability to make the required findings. However, one sign requires an exception for additional height and is unable to make one of the required findings. And so staff does believe that the findings can be made to support the exception for the Williams-Sonoma sign. And so aside from the requested sign exception and additional height requests, the MSP complies with the sign ordinance. And so for these reasons, staff does recommend that the DRC move to adopt the draft resolution granting approval of the Broadway Point Master Sign Program under application Y21053. And that does conclude my presentation. I'm available for any questions, and the applicant, Tom Salmon of Arrow Signs, is also available. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do any of the commissioners have questions or comments for staff? The only comment I have is the staff report says that halo lighting's encouraged for the skyline signs, but the sign ordinance where it references it, and I'll just read it. Skyline signs placed on the upper portions of buildings shall be constructed of individual halo lit letters if illumination is desired. So Just to be technically correct in our documentation, we may want to update that. I'm not saying I don't think it makes a difference for how the commission will look at it, but just wanted to make sure.
I
in
think
alignment.
that language, and it might not have been labeled, but that language is actually in the design guidelines. So it's not part of the ordinance, it's not part of the code. To your point, it does say shall, but a guideline is a guideline. And it's, so an exemption would be appropriate.
Okay, fair enough, thank you. Okay, do we have a presentation from the applicant? Okay. Then let's move for public comment on this particular project. And is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to the commission on this particular master sign program? And do we have anybody on Zoom?
We do not.
And I'll just to be safe, I'll reiterate that if you're on Zoom or trying to get on Zoom, the meeting ID is 833-0529-6389, and the password is 782241. And you can also call in on Zoom at 1-669-900-6833. And with that being said, are we seeing any activity, Mr. Secretary?
We are seeing no activity.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll close public comment on this project and move to commissioner comments and motions and possibly a vote. So do we have any comments from the commissioners?
I would like to make sure the finding, just so that we set something down on the Williams-Sonomas. I was on the sign subcommittee meeting, and I think we decided because of the architecture, there was really only one place where that sign could fit, and that's the exception on that. The other thing I would like the commission to consider as within the conditions, and I think I mentioned this to you before, that when this goes through, you correct the clock. Not only is it wrong, but each clock is different than the one 90 degrees. And so if whoever is in charge of setting the time as part of the sign program could get up there and twist the dials to make it properly. So those are my comments.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Killian.
It's a great point.
Any other comments from any of the other commissioners?
I'll just say, as the new guy, I mean, looking at the buildings and knowing them, I mean, the buildings were designed to have signs in those locations, and that's the way they were designed, so it makes sense to me.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Newsom.
I agree. I felt like these are the logical locations. Many of them are already there. So I am embarrassed I never noticed the clock was wrong. So other than that, I think these are great.
I'm not sure I noticed there was a clock. Thank you, Commissioner Case. Any comments, Commissioner Valia?
No, I don't. I have to concur with my fellow commissioners. I haven't seen any other spot for the signage, so I think it's a proper location.
Great, thank you. And then the chair's comments, since I was on sign subcommittee, I've already reviewed it, and I'm supportive of the program as it is, with Commissioner Killian's condition that he added. So do we have a motion for this program?
I will make a motion to approve the Broadway Point Master Sign Program with the conditions previously mentioned.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a
I
second?
will second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Will the secretary take a vote, please?
Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Valia,
Yes.
where is my sheet? Good Lord. Commissioner Newsom,
Yes.
Commissioner Killian,
Aye.
Vice Chair, well, we already did that, and Chair Krelling.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, moving on to our second public hearing of the evening. It's the Hot Boys sign, design review and the sign ordinance exception on application Y22001 at 1394 North Main Street. And this is a study session as opposed to looking for final approval. So we can be a little more informal as we go through this one. So does staff have a presentation?
Yes, thank you. Good evening again. My name is Jessica Gonzalez, and I am the project planner for the Hot Boys Sign Ordinance Exception Study Session before you tonight. So jumping right in, the Hot Boys restaurant is located at the corner of North Main and Cypress, addressed as 1394 North Main Street, but more commonly known as the former Mel's Diner. The project scope includes a new rooftop sign and large projecting blade sign. As proposed, the signs will require 5 sign ordinance exceptions. Exceptions are normally reviewed by the DRC sign subcommittee first, and then by the full DRC. However, we felt with this unique request that the application would be better served by a full DRC study session and then full DRC. And so here are the elevations with the proposed signs. The top view is the building side along Cypress, and the bottom elevation is the smaller side of the building along North Main. These are the specifications for the roof sign. The letters range in size from 10.5 inches to 4 feet 4 inches. Lighting includes LED and Lumaflex rope illumination. The sign will require a sign ordinance exception to install a roof sign with vertical dimension more than the 30-inch maximum. As proposed, the sign height ranges from 35 to 52 inches. And these are the specifications for the large projecting blade sign. The sign projects 3.5 feet into the right-of-way. This sign is 8 feet tall and approximately 17.75 square feet in size. As proposed, this sign would require 4 sign ordinance exceptions. First being an exception for a blade sign over the maximum 4.5 feet square foot that we normally use. An exception to allow a blade sign projecting above the building. This blade sign does project above the parapet by 2 feet. And third, an exception to allow a 16-inch thick blade sign where the code allows for a 6-inch maximum thick blade sign. And then lastly, an exception to install a 3-sided blade sign where the code only allows for 2 sign faces. So we are considering the sign side shown on the left side of the screen as a 3rd sign face. And so as noted in the staff report, the paint and roof screening were previously approved at a staff level for the new restaurant. Approvals were also issued for 2 signs that were compliant with the sign ordinance. The adjacent mural has also been approved by the Arts Commission, and staff was provided with this rendering, which incorporates the signs, the mural, and the building remodel to get a sense of how the signs will interact with the site and building. And so based on the amount of requested sign ordinance exceptions, I just included the required findings on the screen to give a sense of the findings that would need to be made by the DRC. And so this is just a study session. So staff's recommendation would be for the Design Review Commission to review the proposal and provide any input and comments on the sign ordinance and signs themselves. And that does conclude my presentation. The applicant team is also available for any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have any questions of staff by commissioners?
I have a couple questions, but they may be better suited for the applicant, so let me know if you want to kick it to them. In the dimensions for the sign that goes on the roof, and I read the narrative, it seems as though the wavy metal portion behind the sign that says Hot Boys is also being used to screen some of the roof material.
Yes,
Right.
that corrugated metal was approved under the staff level design review for the rooftop equipment screening.
Okay, and it runs the full 40 feet that's indicated on that elevation? Okay, because the only reason I'm just asking for clarification is in the rendering, the Robert Becker rendering, it doesn't look like it extends as far beyond the world-famous Hot Boys word, so I just wanted to check.
That's a good point.
That might, there may be some changes that were made along the way. I want to say through the design review at the staff level, we had requested some additional screening because some additional equipment was going to be placed on the roof, so we wanted to make sure that was fully screened. So that rendering might be a little out of date in terms of those revisions that were made.
Okay, and I just wonder, this might be more conversational. Do we prefer hiding the equipment and also the mural? Or would we prefer to see a little bit of equipment and more of the mural? I don't know, just a thought. And then my other question was, never mind, I'll talk to the applicant about that. Thanks.
If I could piggyback on Casey, that metal screening is what was approved, is that up there now? Or, because what's up there now is more of a straight slanted and it doesn't have the wave action. So is what's up there now to be taken down, or is that what we get?
The sample that I was given has that waviness to it. I haven't taken a close look at what's there now, so I'll let the applicant speak to whether or not that's going to be changed.
I think that went up today, the corrugated metal. It's not complete, but there's a good sampling of it up there as of this morning.
I haven't seen it yet.
So that's just a sample then?
Well, I mean, in other words, it's not complete.
Okay, I was like, I pass by every day.
So it'll,
All right. And the rendering shows white Hot Boys, and in the description, they show it red. Is it going to be red or white, or red during day and white during night?
I'm not sorry.
Right.
You can ask the applicant
Okay,
that.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for staff? Look, there being, yeah.
Do we know how high off the roof the Hot Boy letters are? I mean, from my read, those letters are actually, could be below the parapet. I guess the underlying concern is, once they build all that up, what is the actual top elevation of the Hot Boy sign?
Yeah, my read on the existing building is the rooftop is pretty flat, so I'm not sure that a large or a tall parapet exists. But just based on the rendering on page 3, it looks pretty close. The applicant could probably speak to that too.
Oh.
I can clarify that. It's a 28-inch parapet. The sign starts at the bottom of the
Actually, he needs to
Yeah.
come up.
You have to
Yeah.
go to the microphone for our.
Actually, if you want to just hold on
Virtual
for
viewers, yeah.
1 second, we're just about at that point. So, thank you. Anything else of staff? Okay, then does the applicant have a presentation? Yeah.
Good evening. My name is David Abugaben. I'm part of the Hot Boys team. I'm going to talk a little bit more technical about the sign, answer some questions, and then Victor's going to come and talk about a little bit of how we came up with the sign, how we came up with the design, and what the building's supposed to look like. So to answer your question, 28-inch parapet off the roof. The sign starts at the bottom of the parapet and goes up 4 foot. Just the H goes up 4 foot, 4 inches above the parapet. And the other letters, get my glasses on here. And the other letters are about 2 foot 11 inches above the parapet, to answer your question. Victor, let you come up here and speak.
How you guys doing?
Great, how are you?
Good. I guess yeah. Let's talk about the aesthetic, or what we were going for. And oh, I'm sorry. My name is Victor Gabin. These are my cousins right here. They've been, doing business in Walnut Creek for 30 plus years, I think, at this point. Yeah. So the signage is supposed to kind of give the aesthetic of like retro, that grandiose like 50s, 60s pylon signage that kind of has a, it has a certain vibe to it that you don't really see anymore. And, our first store in Oakland is in an area where all of the signage kind of is very simple, and it's scaled back, small box letters, all looking very similar. And when we opened it up, we wanted to kind of bring back an aesthetic that is no longer in the Oakland area, and it's kind of become this iconic signage. We have people pulling up old school cars, 60s Impalas and stuff, parking right in front of our restaurant, taking photos now. It's a big point of intrigue with the city of Oakland, and people, they travel from all over the Bay Area and outside the Bay Area just to come and take a photo in front of the restaurant. The corrugated metal is sourced from a dock in Oakland. It's kind of a nod to where we developed the concept and where we grew. It's indicative of the port city that Oakland is, and it gives a taste of the culture that developed that area. It's recycled material, so it's also green and all of that stuff, and it has a kind of like an edge to it, because it's not a conventional material that you use to build with like that, but it has, it's similar to the concept that we created, the food, it kind of ties into that no frills, good Southern food, The letters is actually Burke's handwriting. All of our signs are actually, they were developed by just Burke here drawing it, everything, our logo, that text, that's all his handwriting. So, it's something that we started with on a piece of paper, and it's just kind of developed with us this whole time. And it's, it's trademarked now, and it's, it's kind of iconic for us, in terms of our brand and the look. It's synonymous with the food, The pylon sign, which is the one that's sitting at the Main Street? It's sitting on the corner of Main, is actually, it's based off of the Fox Theater signage. Burke drew it based off of the Fox Theater signage, and then we actually had somebody make it, pretty much replicated it, not to scale, but, smaller scale, because the Fox got a really big sign. But that's what we have in Sacramento, is that pylon sign, and we don't have any other sign. And then the one that's on the roof is the one that we use in Walnut, in Oakland. So between Oakland and Sacramento, you kind of have the best of both worlds in terms of signage, and it's, the building's pretty big. I don't know if you've walked past it since we painted the whole thing. It's a pretty large footprint for downtown, for that area especially. And I just feel like anything much smaller than that might come across as like, phoning it in. I don't know. It seems like it wouldn't be to scale. Like it would be out of place. And that's just my opinion, but I do think that there is something there, because with how big the mural is, how beautiful it looks, the improvements we've done to the space overall, I think it would be a shame to, cheapen out on the signage and have something that's not really fitting of the building or the business that's going into it. I'm going to turn it over to Burke. He's the guy that designed everything, so, yeah.
How's it going? I'm Burke. Nice to meet everybody. Thanks for your time. Thanks for having us in here to talk to you guys. Yeah, I think Victor hit a lot of the points, the same points that I would hit. I think Hot Boys is based on a sense of authenticity, and like he said, a bit of Southern hospitality. And I think that that's something that we tried to display visually with the restaurant, and doing that by using older, style of signs and playing off of the old theater signs. I think, Victor mentioned that you see signs like that or you don't see signs like that being used as much anymore. And by doing a little bit of research, I found a bunch of signs in Walnut Creek from the past that were very similar to that. So I think one of the things that we're trying to do is, while bringing new life to some of these older buildings, also pay homage to the types of signs and things that, were around years ago. And I do think that it tends to, or serves to kind of create that welcome feeling, a bit of nostalgia. It just kind of feels good, which is something that I think is a core value for Hot Boys. So I think, that's kind of where I was at when, in terms of finding inspiration and things like that and designing these signs. And yeah, I think it complements the mural well, and the building is almost sort of like dwarfed by the huge mural. So having signage that feels small, like Victor mentioned, almost cheapens the look in my opinion. And I feel like we've all put a lot of intention and time and money and effort into that corner at this point, and I would like to see us continue to sort of celebrate it and not try to push it into the corner or shy away from sort of that new energy that we're bringing to that block. But yeah, that's I guess kind of a little bit about how I got to those designs initially. And if you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to speak to that, to anything you guys are interested to know about or anything like that. But that's about all I have.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rola Gabin. Whole family's here. Thanks for having us tonight, and love to hear some feedback about our sign that we are putting in front of you tonight. I think it's really important to also get that my family's been in this community for 40 years. We've gone through probably 6 different signs review, not in front of you guys, but different locations through the downtown. I feel like it's what Hot Boys brings to the table is new and vibrant, which is what we need in our community. Everything is kind of stagnant. 11-inch blocking and green awning, that's what you see downtown. And I hope that you all walk through downtown and see what's there now and what kind of changes. It hasn't really changed. We've been here since the 80s. So what we've done, what our family has done to the corner of North Main and Cypress is going to be huge for downtown. I hope you guys will look at this signage and sign presentation to, something different that is that we can hopefully grow upon and through the downtown. We are an art community, and this is definitely an artistic, organic sign that we are putting in front of you that we're hoping that can be approved. it's, you know, a lot of companies, restaurants, you know, we're in the hospitality industry, so, you know, signage for us is super important. It's a direction and a form of communication to our guests. So the success of our, you know, restaurants, our, you know, whatever, if it's a restaurant or a retail or what have you, signage are important. And block lettering, 11 inches or 12 inches or whatever they are, sometimes just doesn't work. It's not part of, you know, we spend a lot of money and time into branding, and this is part of, you know, the whole package, and it's super, super important. So I hope that you will look at our signs tonight and look at them from an artistic view, and you know, and hopefully it'll make you smile, because they're pretty special, and I hope that we can get some feedback that can move us in the right direction. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have questions?
I have a question, and it's regarding the scale. I get an impression when I see the elevations, and I see a sign that's, and probably I'm off here, but I see a sign that's not as big as the sign that I see on the rendering, and I also perceive a different location. So maybe it's just a perception thing. I would like, I'm sure the elevation is accurate.
The elevation is more accurate than the rendering. I will say that. I don't even have that rendering actually, but I don't know if you're able to.
You need to
put it
come
up
up to the mic to respond. It's got to be through the microphone.
I'm just saying that I believe the elevations are more accurate than the rendering that was shown in staff's presentation. I personally don't have that rendering, so I don't know if we could pull it up again so that we could maybe look closer at what is different about it. But I think in terms of kind of getting an idea of what we're proposing, I think this elevation is more accurate.
Right. What I think about the rendering is that the location of the signage appears to be more proper in terms of being closer to the corner. And that's where you will, I assume, that's where you will get to see the signage best.
I think one of the things that we're kind of, that the front of the building, quote unquote, the side of the building that's on Main recedes back from the rest of the buildings there and is also very hidden by a tree. So I think what we're intending is to sort of make the cypress side the actual, spot with the sign, and I think we're sort of trying to center it on the building there. But I'm not, and also in reference to the elevation, and like staff mentioned, the backing, the screening, the piece of shipping container is significantly wider than what's shown in this elevation, and it does go closer to the front of the building. So I don't know if that makes a difference, but
Well, probably gives you an opportunity of moving the signage closer.
Sure, you might be right, yes. Right.
Yeah, I don't see the centering so important as the corner as being the desirable.
The focal point.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Yeah, that's good feedback for sure.
So then just on the elevation versus rendering, so the Hot Boys will be red. Yes?
The Hot Boys will be red, and it's in an LED simulated neon. So it's, we'll have the look from the ground that it's real neon, but it's much more resilient and better for, being eco-friendly. It's a neon simulated with LED.
Okay.
So, and it's it's set in like a channel sign. So there is like a metal sign housing with a band of, or a strip of neon that spells the letters, and it is red.
Okay, and just one more clarifying render versus elevation. When we look at, and we always get caught up on renderings, by the way, because they're just, it puts everything into context.
Yeah,
So
I
when
feel
look
like
at
the Hot Boys text looks bigger in that rendering than.
I think it does. So when I look at,
It's a little bit deceiving in that way.
from the bottom of the H to the top of the H looks almost equal to the blue component we're seeing on the building, and in the rendering, it doesn't.
It's double.
So, I mean, so, and so because I initially really reacted, I was like, wow, that's really tall.
It's
and they're
huge. Yeah,
asking
when
for a
I
lot
saw it,
more.
I thought the same thing, to be honest.
Okay. so
And
sorry,
just to
Carlos.
clarify,
No, that was my point.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, the rendering does not, it's not to scale, the sign's not to scale on the rendering. If you look at elevation on page number 2, that's, in my opinion, that's the look, and that's more to scale than the rendering.
Okay.
And to your point, Brian, I think you're right. I think that sign should be moved
Brian.
Our name.
more forward.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, the
around.
signs are.
Yeah.
Carlos.
Carlos.
It was a good.
I'd have to agree with that because when I was looking at this, I mean, on Cypress is a very narrow street.
It is,
right?
yes.
And that was my comment about, is it above or below the parapet?
Right.
It actually would need to, the bottom of it would need to be above the parapet for you to see it from Cypress because you're only looking about 70 feet.
Right.
Right,
You'll lose that much of the sign.
right.
And it'll dilute it a lot. So I think if you bring it to the corner more, it'll be more visible. And I mean, I think the sign. I mean, I think the sign should be smaller. Frankly, I mean, based on there's no real precedent of that in Walnut Creek, and it's good to push the envelope a little bit. And I think you guys did a great job with the mural and the composition and everything. But I mean, we got to be really careful on this about the precedents that we set, particularly at buildings at these scales.
Yeah, I agree with that comment. I think you're trying to make up the scale of the building, which is so shallow and with a big sign. You're trying to grow the building with the signage. And I think it should be more proportional to the building, meaning smaller signage.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that you put, I like the story about the shipping container and putting that on top, and part of that being with your brand. The building is actually squat, right? So doing this is actually going to effectively raise the height of the building, which I think oddly is actually a good thing here. It'll bring attention to it.
Yes.
But I think, if you looked at the project we just approved, there's a building that's much larger in scale. It's on a bigger street, and the maximum height of understand that I've actually worked on your side. I've worked for retailers, and I know when you have those irregular logos, I mean, where does a planner actually pull the dimension from? And you got that big H, which of course is part of your thing. But I mean, it's got to relate to the standards somehow, right? I mean, so, but and if you just look at the precedents around the street, I mean, nothing even approaches 40 inches tall, or even 30 inches tall. I mean, even on larger buildings, so.
And if I could just interject, because we're sort of moving into comment phase, it sounds like.
Okay.
Do we have any more questions for the applicant before we close that section off?
I have some questions. How far back is the sign on the Hot Boy sign from the fascia?
So the wall that's being built is about 2 feet back from the parapet.
Okay, and is what's up there now, I went by there at about 5 o'clock. So is that what we're gonna get?
So,
As far as the backing,
no, it's not complete yet.
it's not complete?
No.
Because it was squared off and it had a tilt to it also. So is it going to be,
It is straight up and down. I don't know about the tilt. It is squared off currently, but I don't believe it's tilted.
Yeah, it didn't
You
look
may have
tilted.
seen it before they had to fix some of it or something, but it's straight up and down.
Okay, and
Definitely
again, the
cloth.
material, is it actual a shipping container, thick steel, or does it have bend to it to where, has anyone done any wind loading or whatever, to where you have this, I don't know, the weight of your sign when it's connected, it appears you're just connecting it through some bolts to this backing.
Well, there's
Has anyone looked at the structural component, whether a wind is gonna blow it over or make it oil can and wiggle and everything?
No, it's structure, it
solid.
has a full framed out backing.
Okay,
And then the metal was affixed to that.
Yeah, there's
So
a,
there's a
there's a structural
standing-
wall behind the shipping container,
okay,
and the shipping container is attached to the structural wall.
okay. Did you ever consider putting it on the blue facade? I mean, you have this big signage band of blue, and there's nothing there. Why didn't you take advantage of that and put it down there?
To be honest, I think I did consider that, and actually, that's how it is at our store in Oakland. But I think for me, it sort of made that screen make sense to, it's like without something on there, that screen seems like kind of unnecessary, or like it doesn't really, it doesn't add much to the building. It just seems like we're hiding stuff. So I think my thought was to make it seem a little more intentional by putting the sign there.
Okay. The blade sign, how does that relate to your name? To me, you're advertising hot chicken.
Yeah, I think, and that again goes back to to a more like nostalgic retro vibe where, you see in old, cafes and corner stores where they have big signage that just sort of lists the things that they serve. Collard greens, mashed potatoes, cornbread, like on the side of a small kind of like convenience store.
Right, but that's again
chicken
more
shop.
advertising your product. It's not the name of your store or anything. And for the amount of signage and the weight that you're putting toward that, to have it say hot chicken as opposed to hot boys.
Yeah, I think maybe it's we're attempting to not be too redundant, and I think it's that's kind of a core value. The concept itself is literally only chicken. We have a very limited menu, and the overall approach is almost like a less is more kind of Southern simplicity. And so, it's sort of intentionally just representing what we do and what we kind of take that approach of do one thing and do it really well, and that's what we do.
Okay. The white world famous on the red banding. Why just world famous? Why not world famous hot boys or?
Again, just I think to be to try to avoid being redundant, and I think it does say world famous hot boys in that same spot on our Sacramento building, but I think exactly. So, in terms of this situation, I think it's better to be world famous just because it doesn't come off as redundant or repetitive.
Okay. And again, I want to go back to what some of the other commissioners started alluding to is, the visibility. It's a narrow street, and as you mentioned, the mural extends out beyond that. So again, if you're going from south to north, you're really not going to see this till you go past it.
Right.
And coming back the other way, your opportunity would be where the hot chicken or on that corner. So again, did you try to take advantage of the sight lines and place a sign there as opposed to pushing it back on Cypress Street?
Yeah.
I think, did you ever come up with a layout or a concept that might take advantage more of?
Yeah, I think I think we did. I think, you know, moving it, centering it more on the windows on sort of the front half of the building would satisfy that visibility from Main and potentially balance it better overall in terms of placement. I do think I'll have to take a look, but I think it will be important to also consider that screening in terms of the placement so that it seems balanced there as well.
Right. Is the screening accurate on your page 2 elevation as far as the backing, or
I think
does it extend the length of the?
It comes further to the front of the building. Probably, I think it's about 2 feet off of the front and then also 2 feet off of the side. And then it probably only goes down to about the door, where these doors are on the side of the building.
Yeah, I don't think that elevation represents the backing, because the backing wasn't a part of the sign package. But I do believe the screening comes more forward towards Main Street.
Okay. And then last question, is it just coincidental that your colors are primary colors with that mural, or did you do that intentionally to kind of blend in with the mural?
No, these are our colors. I mean, these are the same PMS colors that we use on all locations.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Great. Do we have any other questions?
I have another question, and it's related to the blade sign. I mean, it's got nothing to do with the other sign. I mean, it's like two different stores. I mean, did you ever? I know you were paying homage to the theater, and I understand that.
Sure.
But shouldn't there be some consistency between one sign and the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is consistency. They both hinge on like a use of neon and have like a sort of industrial retro vibe. They don't look exactly the same, but I think they work well together. And yeah, I think they do fit.
Thank you.
I have a question. Just because there are so many exceptions and it's clearly making us all a little uncomfortable, is there an opportunity on the chicken one to consider only having two sides? Like maybe the edge doesn't occur, or maybe one
Yeah, I
side?
mean, the edge is literally just a line
Yeah.
detail. It's like, I personally would hesitate to call that a side of a sign, really, but I see that you guys do consider that to be a side of the sign. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's a necessary design, a key element of the design. So I feel like, sure, we could consider doing without it. I also feel like if you make a sign that's, 3D on both sides and it ends up being that thick, it's like, why not decorate that, foot wide thing that you have that is facing forward, And I don't know if it comes through in the elevation or whatever here, but it is just 3 pieces of neon.
Yeah.
It's
Does
just
it
lights,
have to
basically.
be that thick? Like functionally, could it be narrower?
I'm not completely sure. I don't really think so. I think because of the lights that are inside and the way that structurally that the sign would have to be constructed, that it would need to be about that thick no matter how you do it.
Yeah, so the actual box is 8 inches thick, and that's as thin as we could go with all the transformers and components that are in the box.
Okay.
Does it have to be lit? I mean, could you externally light it or something? I mean, the mechanics of it are known. I mean, that's what you have to do, particularly when they're back to back that way, but it just gets to be kind of massive.
Yeah, I think that it certainly could be lit in different ways or illuminated in different ways. However, I do think that kind of goes back to what Carlos was saying, where connecting the two signs in a stylistic way with the neon and the sort of, the type of construction is one of the things that adds to the cohesiveness of it. But, it certainly could be lit in other ways. To be honest, we've gone back and forth a bit with the sign in Sacramento dealing specifically with that so that it reads well at night. And we did have to kind of re-engineer it a bit. I think what we've come up with now does look really good at night when it's lit and, is kind of really hits that glowing theater pylon sign that you could see from a block away, you know what I mean? But yeah, certainly there are other ways to light a sign for sure, and we could consider that. But I think, the neon really kind of ties it all together, for me at least.
Okay, any more questions? I just had one question, just based on some comments from the conversation. Are you proposing essentially bigger, bolder, and more signage in the Walnut Creek location than you have in the other two locations?
It's a much larger building, so there is more room for signage. I don't think we're intending to have more signage in Walnut Creek just for the sake of having more signage, but more for balance and design and balance more so than to make a bigger splash or anything like that.
And just to give some perspective, Oakland and Sacramento, they're 900 square feet. This building's around 2,000 square feet.
Thank you. All right, we'll close the applicant presentation and Q&A. Let me ask the secretary, do we do public comment on study sessions?
Sure.
Okay, so then if there's anyone in the public, in the chambers, and or on Zoom who would like to speak on behalf of this project. All right, would you?
Seeing no Zoom hands.
Great, we have one person in the chambers. Would you state your name, sir?
Good evening. Brian Hirohara, BH Development. I'm also president of the Walnut Creek Downtown Association. And I'm actually not part of their team. They didn't ask me to be here, but I wanted to be here. I think this is important. I'm going to give start with some more global comments. The backdrop of what's going on downtown is we have record vacancies. And I believe I'm speaking for an organization. I get 10 minutes instead. I'm not going to take 10 minutes, but for Walnut Creek Downtown instead of 2, right?
It's actually 3, Brian.
For an organization?
Are you speaking on behalf of the organization?
Yes. I won't take that much, but it's really hard to speak fast. In the bigger picture of things, we have record vacancies. We're struggling. We own the building right next door where the mural is, and some other properties downtown. And it's just, I always say that it took us 3 years to lease the former Apple space when previously we would have had multiple offers. We only had one tenant even tour the space when we leased it to LensCrafters, who recently opened. We have a lot of challenges, and I think, unfortunately, the sign ordinance is one of those things that we've been talking about for over 10 years about amending and bringing current. So when we talk about precedent and such, I think part of the issue is we just haven't gotten around it for staffing issues at the city level, but it really is antiquated. A lot of discussion through economic development of the necessity to change that. Just to take a step back, the Gaben family, if you may know, transformed hubcaps into Broderick, which is kind of similar to what I think they're doing here. They recently opened Lita's, and now I think what they're doing with Mel's to Hot Boys is like what they did with hubcaps to Broderick. And, 3 great restaurants within a block, great family-operated business. They're completely invested in the community. They're local, family business, and I think they've really proven their mettle. Again, this isn't all signage related, but I think it's important to keep these things in mind. We actually, I've been to both locations, and their food is the bomb. I mean, I don't eat fried chicken. We had it with my family left over at the beach, and I was clawing over my daughters to get the last bites of this stuff. I mean, nothing else compares, I can tell you that. It's going to be a big deal. Main Street has really been struggling lately. A lot of restaurants have been going on to Locust, but if you look at this block, we have the dumpling hours, which is great, but we haven't, a lot of the activity is being pulled toward Locust, so I think it's really important for this to be a successful location. You know, we collaborated with their team and Burke, who's brilliant and actually world famous himself, on the mural. I had planned on adding a mural and remodeling our building for years, but COVID hit, and so when this opportunity came up, you know, and the mural is colorful, it's urban, it's fun, it's bold, it's edgy, and it's local. You know, there's reference to local images, and I think it all ties together. The mural ties together with Hot Boys. The signage is the same way. And I think it's important because personally I'm trying to push through the Downtown Association, and so a lot of the things that we've done through what we call Rebound are things that I think we should have been doing all along. Pushing more to, same thing, urban, edgy, our version of that, artsy. You know, we donated Bullman to the city because I wanted to make a public statement of more urban and edgy and fun. The Head Fountain, I was actually involved in that long ago. And this is the next stage of being that urban, edgy, fun brand that I think we need to do and push the envelope. And they're asking to push the envelope on signage, I realize that. I like the idea of setting a precedent that pushes the envelope. And keep in mind that other buildings may be smaller, but they may not have this large backdrop. The backdrop, and we talk about the signage being an extension of their brand and all those urban, edgy, fun things. And there's really a hierarchy that we're looking at. We have this beautiful mural that grabs your eye, and Burke alluded to this. Then you have this big, colorful building that we're seeing now, and then you have the signage, and it all is a hierarchy. And it's a small building, relatively, but it has a lot of frontage as well. But if the signage isn't big and bold and edgy and colorful, then I think it almost gets lost in the mural. And I think it all works together, and I think it's really important. And I'd like to show you, I'll give you one little piece of a tidbit of my history. I started in the business as a real estate manager for McDonald's Corporation in the Rocky Mountain States. And I remember everyone used to say, well, why don't you just build it on the edge of town? People will come to you. And this was many years ago. Statistics were that 55% of McDonald's business was impulse. So signage is what the impulse is. And that visibility, that pop is really important to a restaurateur. And again, with the challenges in our economy today and the pandemic, I think it's really important to give them as much visibility and really their brand. I think that's really the key. Jessica, can we bring up the images? Along the lines of what I was discussing in terms of, do I control it? The first image doesn't, sorry, that's only about a third of the, well, you can see kind of up in the upper left-hand corner. Thank you. This is in downtown, or Burlingame Avenue, a Lululemon. That is just their blade sign. That is not their you see their primary sign below. It's huge. It's beautiful. I mean, it's a showstopper, and it's you know, it's much bigger than anything on the street, and I think it set an excellent precedent for yeah. It's enough said. I was in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara, partly to check out the Funk Zone, which is where I'm trying to push. It's a very popular artsy area. This is San Luis Obispo. These are big blade signs, and I was just telling Mike here that, You know, I can't tell you how many times you go by a location, you're walking on the sidewalk, and you have to go and look, what is this? Because you don't see a blade sign. These are probably triple the size of what we typically see in our downtown. This was in San Luis Obispo. Actually, we had dinner. That's just their blade sign. And it's got the cocktail neon, it's got the thing above, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's an extension of their business and their brand. And I love these, you know, old retro neon signs, and they really added character to the downtown. And I think signage, big signage that's done well, can really add to the character. This is ironically a flame image, much smaller building, storefront, and two signs. I think they actually had another blade sign on the other side. This is a pub sign, a very large blade sign. Again, not even their primary sign. That's in San Luis Obispo. This is interesting, Santa Barbara. If you look down, there's two blade signs. So that's not primary signage. There's two blade signs, each of which are larger than what would be typically allowed in our downtown. And this is just another large sign. That's another double blade sign. So I'm just using the precedent because I happen to be looking at signage in downtowns. I'm always trying to look at precedents and inspiration. I'd just like you to keep your minds open because I think this corner and the concept that the Gaben family doing is very important. Yes, it pushes the envelope. Yes, it's edgy. Yes, it's colorful and it's big and bold. But I think that's what they are, and I think we need to help them in our downtown as much as we can, and push the envelope. And again, that little Lululemon sign is a perfect example where you go, that is a ridiculous sign. I mean, it's in a good way. And so I'm just asking you to be open to, you know, and again, they're a proven commodity in our downtown. They're a very important partner. That's why I'm here. I haven't eaten dinner, and I feel like eating one of their chicken sandwiches. But that's all I have to say. I'd love if you have any questions. But again, I'm just encouraging you to be open to and I think some of the comments that have made have been very appropriate in terms of being a little placement of the sign, et cetera. Thank you.
Great, thank you, sir. I think you made us all hungry. And do we have anybody on Zoom that wishes to address the commission?
I'm seeing no hands.
Okay, thank you. Then we will close the public comment part of this project and open up for commissioner commentary.
I will go. I haven't gotten to go first in a really long time, so I want to go first. The first thing that I noticed when we looked at the package was the blue band around the building. And it seems to be a prominent feature. And so I couldn't help but want to take some of the Hot Boy sign and like overlap it on the blue a little bit. But I'm not trying to design anything for you. I understand how you're saying you'd like the Hot Boys sign to integrate and give the screening a purpose. But there's a part of me that it's like, that may in and of itself speak to the mural and do its own thing. So maybe there's an opportunity, like several of us mentioned, to scoot it a little closer to Main. And then I'm like, maybe consider the idea of like integrating it with the building. And part of where I'm coming from is I think that you guys have all had to suffer through me talking about how I want more pedestrian and less car stuff. So I think this corner wants to be more about a pedestrian experience. I think a lot of people are going to walk there from the parking garages, and we're still seeing a lot of the outdoor dining from our COVID response. So I think that making it, yes, I like it to integrate with the mural in the background, but there's a part of me that I'm like, make it more for somebody who's walking to see, especially if you have the people coming in their cars to take pictures, so it can like be in the background with them. So I'm wanting to like bring it down. I'm not thrilled that there are so many exceptions, so I would love if there could just be some simple studies to try to maybe bring the scale of it down a little bit so we don't have to go quite so far out on a limb. But I do visually appreciate what you guys are doing. I actually really like the hot chicken sign. I like that it has nothing to do with your name. I just think it's fun, and that's the sign I'd take a picture underneath because it's like kind of silly and a little weird, which I like. And then I think that speaks well to the mural in the background. I think that if there were just opportunities for things to be a little bit smaller or a little more narrow, then it doesn't have to be such a stretch. I think I have no strong opinions about the world famous, because I was so distracted by the blue, and I think that it is an opportunity to be edgier and have like that fun corner, and I'd love to see the outdoor dining really activated. And so of course I'm a landscape architect, I'm like, maybe there's some planters that have some fun planting or something like that, because I just think there's such a movement for encouraging people to be outside and taking their food outside, and then you get the public theater of people going up and down the street, and I think this could really feed into that. So just overall, if there's a way you could try to rein in so we're not doing quite so many exceptions, or maybe focus all the exceptions on like the chicken one, and maybe the Hot Boys one is asking for less because it's smaller and lower, or something. So I don't know if that's incredibly helpful, but those were my initial reactions and thoughts. And when we get the chance to see it again, I hope those have been considered, and if there's hardships or reasons those can't be done, that those are really clear for us, so that we have that leg to stand on to decide this is an okay exception.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Valia.
Yes, to Brian's remark, I think, Brian, this is more Vegas than Santa Barbara. That's my take. So, and why is it more Vegas? I mean, there used to be a building there with everything here, with the mural, with the signs, with everything. It's just a backdrop. I mean, it's so much the Vegas way of doing things. So, but I like it. That's the funny thing. I like it. I feel like probably it feels initially like it doesn't belong there, but probably the exception is good for that corner. And I agree with all my fellow commissioners. I mean, if we can bring things a little bit to scale, if we can move things a little bit to other sides and make them more visible, we might be up to something that's edgy and achieves what you wanted. And I think you have a very good sense of design and proportion and colors and everything. But again, for me, it's Vegas. And Brian, I think you do remember, I don't know if you read it, but Learning from Las Vegas was all about this. I mean, ignoring buildings and putting signs on top of them. So there's no building here, it's only signage, and I'm fine with it.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Gillian.
I'm not really in favor of this, because I think there are ways you can accomplish it within the sign program, still get your branding and everything. I think whether we like the mural or not, it's not doing you any favors. Your colors, primary colors, are exactly what's on the mural, and it just gets lost there. It's kind of a visual mess in terms of where's your sign, the mural is so strong. I think you have to come up with something that's going to stand out on its own. And when I look at this, that hot chicken and hot boys just get lost in the mural. Also, I agree completely with Carlos. You've ignored the building. And I don't know if you want to put it this edgy feeling, why you didn't do something with that facade. It's basically a big box, and you have this blue banding that does nothing for anything. And then you put your sign on top of that. Maybe there's a way you could configure the painting so it's not just a band. Maybe you bring some of that wave action into there, or do something like that. But I think there are some opportunities. You have such a nice facade. I think the Hot Boy signs, as you have it, just by the fact of you're setting back 2 feet and you're at the base of it, I suspect you're not even going to be able to see the bottom third of it, because your angle of sight is going to cut that off. So to be readable, I think it would have to be even higher, and which is even going to blow through a little bit more of the height restrictions on the sign. Again, we've never really been for advertising. That's just the way Walnut Creek is, and so I don't see the hot chicken, other than if it was a true blade sign. But as it's being there, it's almost a primary sign along Main Street, and it really has nothing to do with the sign, the name of the building. So I'm not in favor of that as it's presented. While I agree it's edgy and fun, and I don't disagree with that, again, that's not enough reason to say ignore Walnut Creek sign ordinance. And while I recognize what Brian is saying, it is in the works and maybe it's outdated. But again, you know, there is a process and we don't have to ignore everything. And especially in my opinion, when you can work with the building, you can still get your edginess, and I think you can still get your branding on there, but I think you can still kind of respect a little bit more of the city sign ordinance and work within that. So that's where I'm coming down right now. And also, it would help, there were a lot of inconsistencies, and so I'm not sure what we're getting. The hot chicken sign is different too on the rendering than what it is on your elevation, whether it's white or red. Frankly, I think the white is going to show up better against this mural, but again, we discourage white signs, so that would be another exception. And again, I think we need to know exactly what we're going to see on the back edging that's already been approved. So again, both the elevations and the renderings, I think, need to be cleaned up a little bit so that we know exactly what we're getting. So those are my comments right now.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Killian. Commissioner Newsom, comments?
I'd say I like the pieces. All the pieces are solid, and just echoing what everybody else said and what I said before. I mean, I think that Hot Boy sign, it doesn't have to be symmetrical. It's an asymmetrical building, and the way people experience the building is asymmetrical. At Cypress Street is not really a front. There's not cars speeding by here. I drive down the street all the time. You're moving very slow, and best way to experience the street, and most people you're going to capture, is people walking by, you know, walking down from the mall and so forth. I think maybe look at something that relates to the corner a little better in terms of placement. I think maybe look at putting the Hot Boy sign on the blue, because I think what happens is you have these three signs that they say three different things, but your experience in them is going to be, you're going to go world famous. You're going to be walking by there. You're going to say, well, what's world famous? Because you're not going to see the Hot Boys. You're not going to see it when you're walking down North Main. You're not going to see it down Cypress walking down from Locust. You won't see that sign. You won't get your identity. So if there's a way you can kind of tweak it in a way, you're going to actually get more bang for your buck. And, you know, I think you can get that with a little bit smaller scale that gives us a little bit less of a reach in terms of what we have to approve. I mean, and markedly, the sign standards do have to be upgraded in town. And as you walk down the street, as you said, you know, I mean, there's a lot of signs there that are really out of date, and, you know, it definitely needs an update. But and I think this is a good step, but I think it just needs some tweaking in terms of scale to be at a more human scale, like she said.
Great. Thank you. And my comments, I'm going to start with the blade sign. I like nostalgia, and I love the sign for that purpose. There's a nondescript brick building in downtown Martinez with an old Chrysler blade sign that sticks out, and every time I drive by there, I'm drawn to it. I think it's really slick. The issue that we face with the blade sign is just under the current sign ordinance, it's just essentially that kind of sign is not allowed, a projecting sign like that. And if the commission goes with the exceptions on that sign, I think that would be the commission saying that it's time to change the sign ordinance in a fairly drastic manner so that the city could have things like we saw from the gentleman from the Downtown Association. I mean, I've been downtown San Luis Obispo. It's a really nice, neat, energized downtown. So I think the sign's great. I really like it. I even like it just saying chicken. Again, that's very nostalgic, as you talked about. So I think when we come to the actual hearing, it's really going to be the battle between the existing ordinance and how much the five of us want to send a message and break that ordinance to have that sign. I'm just going to go through all my comment notes here. The mural, it dwarfs the building and your signs. I think others have said that. It gets very busy, and I think your signs get lost in the interplay. So I think that suggestion of moving the world-famous Hot Boys sign down to the blue actually would make your sign pop more and not get lost. It just feels like it's going to get lost. The neon-like effect of the LED replacement, I actually love neon. It's another thing I like. I know typically we have to do a specific exception for neon, so I don't know, something to think about for the actual hearing. You know, do we need to make a specific finding or exception for the, I'm an LED, but I really want to be neon? I think one thing that would really help for the next meeting with us, and I think we've heard this from others too, is much more accurate renderings and elevations, so we can really look at that either on the elevation or the rendering and go, I see exactly what it's going to look like. I think the comments about the vacancies and everything, I'm probably the one person that tends to push. A part of our mission on this commission is to consider the economic viability of design and architecture and signage. So I think there were a lot of really good points made there. And I think that would cover all my comments.
If I can just jump in and add some clarification to some of the things that were brought up. So for the neon specifically, in reviewing this application and against our sign ordinance, the sign ordinance specifically calls out gas tubing for neon, so we would not consider this LED neon-like, needing that neon sign exception. And I think a few of or all of the commissioners brought up potentially including or using the blue band on the building face on both sides for signage. And so I'll just add that there was a sign package from the Hot Boys applicant team that did include 2 wall signs, and that was approved. But I think in further review, the ownership felt that that didn't capture what they were wanting to do and tying into the other locations.
Great, thank you. And I think that will conclude the study session because there's no findings for us to make. I think it's hopefully a lot of good information for everybody.
Yeah, I would like to run down a list of items to make sure that there's consensus on the issues. And it seemed to me as if there was consensus on taking a hard look at moving the roof sign to being a wall sign on the blue band. Is that correct? Consensus there? And there was also, it seemed to be as if there was consensus on taking a look at reducing the height or the size of some of those signs, and I'm not quite sure if it was the projecting sign or the roof sign or both.
Both for me.
I felt more strongly about it on the Hot Boys one, less so on the chicken. I could see how it felt for me because the building is lower and there's such a vibrant mural in the background that the higher projection didn't bother me. And I think it also captures that style. So that was, of the exceptions, that was the one I was the most like, I kind of get that one.
Okay, so is there consensus on studying or reducing the size of both signs, or just the sign that's currently on the roof?
Maybe both need to be studied so that we can understand this versus that, because it helps justify if it is a bigger one and we visually see the this versus that, we understand why one is better.
Do we have 3 commissioners at least 3 that would support that?
I'll support it.
I support that.
Okay.
But again, my take is, we might see something, if they are gonna move it down to the blue and you come up with some other thing, that whole chicken sign may disappear or be a different chicken sign on the blue banding. So again, to say just reduce it and it's okay, I think we're not there yet, or in my mind. I think this whole package needs to come back in whatever configuration they decide to do it. And, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think the allowance of that large projecting chicken sign, that's going to be a big deal decision if we allow a sign like that, because that's a huge precedent we would set.
Okay. And there was also, there was also some statements that would support looking at the reduction of the amount of exceptions. And regardless of what form that takes, but just to reduce the amount of exceptions one way or another.
Yes, that's how I felt.
Again, to be purely on the sign ordinance, I believe they could get what they want and be within the ordinance. I'm not seeing any findings other than our desire to be more edgy. So, to say, okay, if they come back and we only allow 2 exceptions because it's less than 5, I don't agree with that.
Okay, noted.
This is probably not a necessary note, but I also like visually might like it if the Hot Boys wasn't just contained in the blue band. Like I think it'd be cool if it
I agree.
broke that. Just throwing that out there. Okay.
And move it to the corner.
Yeah.
Okay, and there was consensus to move it to the west, I believe, correct? Or move it towards North Main? If it stays on the roof, or regardless, whether it's,
Even if it's on the back.
goes to the wall or the roof, to move it, okay. Because right now, I believe it's centered.
Right.
I think it'd be more advantageous to them.
Yeah.
Would we be able to get at a future meeting, I have no idea where we are with updates to the sign ordinance.
It's currently shelved,
Okay,
yeah,
well, now I know, thank you.
yeah. I wouldn't say shelved, it's currently on hold, pause, yeah. Okay, did I miss anything? Got it, okay. I think we're there.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And that will conclude that study session on the Hot Boys sign project. So now we're moving on to commission considerations. Thank you.
Thank you.
So do we have anything under commission considerations?
Is this my time?
I believe it's your time, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. The only thing I have is that our next meeting, we will take, we'll reselect the sign sub. So it can take the same look and feel as we did today, or it can just be simply volunteering for sign sub. But we'll have to put it on the agenda. Okay? So that's something to think about.
I'm looking at that half of the.
And just a question, I had a question on that, actually.
Well, and I should say, currently, the sign sub is made up of Commissioner Killian, Commissioner Krelling, and Secretary Griffin.
Is there a standard rotation period or schedule that we historically have had on sign sub?
I don't think so. What I would recommend, though, is not doubling up unless you really want to.
Great. Thank you. And anything else under the secretary's time?
That is all I have for tonight. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. And how about commission member and staff reports or announcements? Do any of the commissioners have any announcements or reports? Or any final topics for discussion? All right, there being none, we'll call it adjourned.